Thank you, James. James, don't go away because you're moderating the next panel, but let me just call up your speakers for you. We have here with us Sergio Carvalho, who is the Global Smart City Subject Matter Expert and Asset Architecture Coordinator at Deloitte, Portugal. Sergio, please join us. Another panelist, Palle Geltzer-Dennison, is the CEO and co-founder of UbiqueSense. And UbiqueSense, is a significant company that I think you'll be very interested in. And Palle is from the Technical University of Denmark and founded the company and has spent a lot of time developing an AI-based occupancy sector which collects data on the way that people use their workspaces. I'd also like to bring up to the stage Brent Peckover. Brent is
all of us.
Pardon?
He's here.
Oh, he's already there.
Yeah.
All right. Brent Peckover, who is the Director of Industrial Applications in Christie Digital Systems. The sound is so good here, I couldn't tell who said that, where it came from, and I thought, okay. All right, panel, it's all yours.
Great, thank you, Bob. So let me get my notes. All right, so the post-pandemic smart building. So actually, the last conference I attended, February 2020 in Amsterdam, was this, Smart Building Conference. And I guess, we've seen just a small thing, we've seen a lot of new words added to our dictionary: hybrid working, social distancing, UVC3. But what I'm really interested from you guys is what has really changed, right? What has been the true impact of the pandemic on the smart building industry? So, Sergio, let's start with you. I know one point you mentioned to me earlier on, right, was about the post-pandemic smart building and the real estate mindset and how that's changed. So it was definitely used to be location, location, location. Now, what's your feeling about how real estate has reacted?
Yes, yes, it has changed the mindset. Nowadays, it's more location, experience, and insights. Why experience and why insights? Insights because data is paramount nowadays. You need to have data to manage your building. You need to have information, not just for the owner, but also for the tenants, and essentially for people. And experience. Experience is paramount because it's all about people nowadays. One of the questions that you have after the pandemic, and after every one of us has experienced hybrid work, it's how to bring people back to the office. Why do they want to be back to the office? And that's very important, especially in services company, because the onboarding of people, the experience, the teaming up, the coaching, the mentoring, it's paramount. So let me give you, just not to be fluffy, and let me give you some data. For example, when you build a building, you spend for each million that you spend, you are going to, in the 25, 30 years of the lifespan of the building, you're going to spend around 10 times that on OPEX, on operation costs. And that's normally where the BMS operates, the building automation systems, the BMS operates. Cutting the costs of power, et cetera, et cetera. But on the same building, 10, you have around 200 times the value for salaries earned for people that inhabit that building. Mm-hmm. So people is the real cost. People is the real value. If you impact people productivity, even if it is by 10%, 20%, you impact a lot the value of the building. And the value of the building, it's, for example, once again, let me give you data. If you enhance the quality of the air and the oxygen that you have, you can increase productivity up to 20%. That's huge. Normally, you are in the meeting, and people start to, I need to have a coffee, I need to go somewhere. That's because in the meeting room, the air quality is not that good, for example. On the other side, the quality of lighting. It's also, you can enhance productivity up to 12%. And that is if you have direct lightning of the sun in your face, you can go even further. And those are the impacts that make people love to go to the building, together with find a good room, having a good space to have a break, to have a coffee with the colleagues, etc. All of that, all those use cases are the ones that people say, I want to go to my building because I work better there, even if I commute, even if I stay a little bit more, less time with my family. I want to go to the office because there I have friends, there I have colleagues, there I'm going to learn more, etc., etc., etc. So those are the use cases in which we are working with real estate developers, not just in buildings, but also, of course, in smart districts, and not just office buildings, but multi-purpose offices. So with commercial areas, with office spaces, and also with the residential areas. Although all that impact is paramount. So once again, it's, of course, once again, location, experience is paramount, and then also data, insights.
Okay, yeah. And with Deloitte at the moment, what is the situation with you guys? Are you back in the office? Are you operating some hybrid model of work?
Well, we work essentially as integrators. There are the BMS and several vertical solutions that measure people flow or deal with air quality or can improve the meetings. But we integrate all those solutions to enhance the user experience. And then on the other side, we also provide very valuable data for the owners and the tenants. For the owners, to have this kind of, the owners of the buildings, to have this kind of concerns, it's also very relevant because you are going to increase your the lease up of the building, for example, up to 20%. It's easier to lease a building that is smart, that is also good biophilia, where people feel good, where it's not just technology, it's also the look and feel that you have inside and outside the building, the areas, etc. It's not just technology, but also the owner can have higher occupancy rates. And that's value for the owner. And also, he can raise the rates of up to 11 and 12%. And those data, for example, if you have a LEED Gold building, you can raise your rates up to 12%. Okay. So, being smart, it's a very good investment. Invest in people, it's a huge investment. And what we are doing, we are connecting the dots. We work with the companies, with the tenants and with the owners in greenfield projects, smart districts, smart buildings, but we also work afterwards with the tenants. So we work in the core and shell and afterwards in the fit out with them. And we have understood that every client is completely different. Yeah. Every client has their own concerns, their own problems. Every client is different. Every building is also different. Every location is different. So we first use and work with the client, learn with them. Then we do the integration part, and we help the digital transition to the operation part. That's what we do. And we are doing that with our own offices. Some of the Deloitte headquarters all around the world are the smartest ones in the world.
Nice, yeah.
The one in London, the one in Amsterdam, you name it. For example, in Amsterdam, the number of people that use the building has increased 140% with the measure of the people that really use the building compared to the previous building. So the edge use,
Yeah.
we can put more 140% people than the one
Right,
before.
we can come back to some of those examples. I think they're good.
Yes.
I want to get some of the other guys in.
Sure, thank you.
So Pele, with Ubiquitsense, I mean, you're a vendor of workplace analytics solutions, so IoT with integrating sensors. I mean, what have you seen change since the pandemic began?
Yeah, it's been really a tremendous shift. Obviously, so I'm not going to bore you with a long history of a company, but I started the company 6 years ago because I wanted to measure real-time occupancy in buildings and feed that data into the BMS system so you could control the energy sources and basically save energy in big office buildings. And 5 years ago, there was very little appetite for saving energy in big office buildings. Nobody was really caring about that. So we turned a little bit to the whole workspace management field, and just before the pandemic, or couple of years up to the pandemic, it was all about squeezing more people into the same space. London was driving this very much. We saw big companies change to activity-based working, so people did not have their own desk. They would only use a desk when doing focus work. They'd have to leave the desk and go into meetings and so on and so forth. And they would initially, they would cut down so that it had like 80 desks per 100 people in an office. And just before the pandemic, there were some really aggressive initiatives where people would, or companies would, cut it all the way down to 65 desks per 100 employees. And then came COVID, and all the buildings got empty overnight. And that's been like that more or less for 2 years. And it's been really interesting to follow the big tech companies, for example, how that pendulum has swung back and forth. Like 4 months into the pandemic, they were like, we don't need offices at all. And then another 6 months later, Facebook were like, everybody needs to come back right now because this is not working. And I think we'll end up somewhere in between. So what we're seeing now is that, as Sergio mentioned, companies are really struggling how to get people to come back into the office. Yeah. And one of the things that a lot of companies do is that they try to accommodate the office space to make it more attractive to people to come in, because they realize, as Sergio mentioned, that if you don't maintain the corporate culture by bringing people in and have that talk at the coffee machine, then you start losing the company culture. Yep. You cannot onboard the young people and so on and so forth. So I think there's a general trend right now of trying to bring people back into the office, but companies realize that you don't do that by just having all these endless banks of desks and then meeting rooms. You need new types of spaces, and they have so many different names: huddle rooms, breakout spaces, creative zones, you name it. There's so many, and companies are starting to put those in, but they don't know how people will actually use them. So what we're seeing now is there's a tremendous interest in understanding how this new space is being used versus, the old types of spaces, and how the meeting room's being used, because before the pandemic, if you had 10 people invited to a meeting, there would be 10 people in the meeting room. During COVID, there would be 0 people in the meeting room, and now it'll be anywhere between 0 and 10, because half of them may be online, and you don't really know how much of the physical space you need for that. So you need to essentially measure that and see how your building really caters to the needs of the users to create that user experience. So that's the one side of the thing. The other side of it is that sustainability, energy conservation is now really coming back. And I can't tell whether that's because of COVID or because of the war in Ukraine and thereby the energy prices going up, but it's a fact that people are now companies are really concerned about energy consumption. And with the way that we use the company in such an erratic way, you don't know how many people will be in on Tuesday versus Wednesday. You really need to start doing something about being able to adapt to the people coming into the office. And just to give you an example, we have a customer in Copenhagen, which is a large insurance company. They have a capacity for 750 people. And just last week, I look at the numbers, because we then count all the people inside that whole building. And on Tuesday, there were 450 people in the building. And on Wednesday, it was down to 325. And as a result of that, you can start saving money on ventilation, for example. You don't need to run the ventilation all over the place at 100% if the building's only half full. And the other thing is that they're starting to prepare meals based on how many people are showing up in the morning, which is great, right? Because it helps you save food, but also is an energy saving. So a lot of energy goes into preparing food that gets thrown away. So I think this whole very different use of the office and very varying or erratic use of the office has companies realizing that they also need to do something about sustainability and energy conservation. So that's finally then back on the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, two very clear trends there. And I would say what I hear as well underlying that, occupancy, right? The importance of that, not just but across really all of these different systems. And flexibility as well, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice, all right, Brent, to you. So you're going to be giving a presentation later in the day. Yep, so clean buildings, planning disinfection in your your smart facility with far UVC light. Correct. So